card reveals have returned. We've got some new Darkmoon Faire cards, like this new Hunter legendary Maxima Blastenheimer, which is remarkably close to a custom card we featured in our potential Darkmoon Faire cards. This time around, though, it's a 6-mana 4/4 Hunter Battlecry. Summon a minion from your deck. It attacks the enemy hero, then it dies. So Maxima here's got this cannon. She's pulling a minion from your deck. She's launching it straight into the enemy hero. And I guess there's so much force to the impact that the minion dies after dealing a bit of damage. So some neat interactions here potentially if you have, something giant in your deck. You got a big 10-drop in there, Colossus of the Moon. She pulls that out. It launches into an enemy hero. It dies, it's got reborn, so it leaves behind a body, and you dealt 10 damage for 6 mana, which is pretty insane. Really, any kind of death rattle-y style card at all, where you've got some front half of the minion you're maybe not that excited about, but the back half is there to stay behind after the death rattle activates, and you're getting some damage in the meantime. That's great for Hunter, because Hunter wants bodies on board for pressure. They are fine running lots of death rattles, and of course they want that face damage really badly. So basically here you want a deck that is specifically running minions that are good off of Maxima. If you put this as something like Highlander Hunter, for instance, you got cards like Zephyrus that you really don't want to pull off your Maxima that you might occasionally low roll into. Now, that said, Hunter does have problems sometimes when it comes to running only high cost minions. We talked about this in the custom card video as well, where if you pull 1s and 2-drops off Maxima, you're not likely getting a lot of damage, you're not getting a lot of value on board either, and she feels like a pretty weak 6-mana play. So you're encouraged to run more mid to late game cards, which means you have to make up the difference with spells or weapons in the early game, which is possible, but does add a little bit of a deck building challenge that doesn't fit the Hunter context very well. Usually Hunter likes going very fast with minions in the early game. We've seen Spell Hunter do other things, but this is a minion, so that doesn't exactly vibe. So we have to have some kind of Hunter package, whether that's secrets or some kind of cool weapon package that's able to get by with non-minion cards early to really support Maxima. Otherwise, she's going to whiff very often and won't be worth it. You could also perhaps just run cards that have high attack values, just to push damage and be okay with the 4/4. A 6-mana 4/4 that does like 5+ damage might be okay as the top end of a deck that's trying to be aggressive. So think about like maybe Diving Griffins or something. If you pull a 4/1 and deal 4 damage, maybe it's not the end of the world. You're not pumped, but you've got some high cost death rattles in there too. And of course, cards like this tend to get supported with stuff we haven't even seen yet as well. So at the end of the day, I can see some issues for Hunter building a deck that really supports Maxima well, but cards that go face are great for Hunter. We've got death rattle synergies for Hunter that make sense. So I definitely see a couple different angles here where Maxima lines up pretty nicely. Probably not Highlander Hunter, which has been one of their most successful archetypes. Probably not Face Hunter, which has certainly been their driving archetype lately. But something down the road makes sense for a card like this one. So speaking of cards that work for Maxima, take a look at this bad boy. It's the Darkmoon Tonk. It's not a tank, I guess it's a toy. Apparently it still fits inside of a cannon. It's a 7-mana 8/5 mech, and it's got a death rattle here. It's pretty insane. Fire 4 missiles at random enemies that deal 2 damage each. So this is really the dream card off of our Blastenheimer card before, because you'd get 8 damage sent to your opponent's face, and then if there's nothing on board, perhaps even an additional 8 damage on top of that once this sucker dies, dealing 16 damage. Now, to be clear, that's a pretty dream combo in that exact scenario. Even if your opponent has some minions on board and this goes face a couple extra times or clears some minions, that's still not that likely because this is only 1 minion. You're not going to run a deck with only Maxima and a couple Darkmoon Tonks and pull that off 100% of the time. What else is going to be in your deck? But if we see more cards in this vein with very high attack values and some kind of death rattle upside, it just increases that consistency of our previous card. Now, speaking of Darkmoon Tonk on its own regard, just as its own minion, I do have some concerns for this one. I think it really only works to support a card like Maxima. I don't think this is good in a generalized Hunter list because it's just not quite awkward enough with this death rattle. Like a lot of times opponents will be more than happy to just put a few 1/1s on board, kill the Darkmoon Tonk that only has 5 health, which isn't particularly difficult to deal with by the time you get to 7 mana, absorb those 2 damage hits here and there. If 1 or 2 hits face, it's probably not the end of the world because you played a pretty slow 7-mana play. If you compare this to something like, Dino Tamer Brand, which is a more popular Hunter 7-mana play these days, this doesn't connect that phase 8 immediately, doesn't leave behind as big of a body. And although this is perhaps a little bit more high friction, it's just not nearly as high impact or immediate. Hunter doesn't often just plop down a big minion on 7 and kind of hope for the best. If they did, something even like a Savannah Highmane might work out better than something like Darkmoon Tonk. A little bit faster, stickier minions on board can be more awkward for opponents to deal with than just this one-time ping of these 2 damage missiles. So you've got here a card that could perhaps explore a few synergies. You've got the Maxima line, you've got some mech stuff that's happening, but I think it will probably just be too slow in most cases. So unless exactly that Maxima deck is just perfect and you can find Maxima consistently and that game plan is going to work out well, which by the way, this does not support from a Lorekeeper Polkelt standpoint, because you draw this before your Maxima, which means you can't pull off the combo in the first place, then this is just going to fall a little bit short as a card on its own right, and probably even as a part of that combo. I think you'd rather have the Savannah Highmane for Maxima as well. So this falls a little bit down the list on perfect cards for that setup, and therefore I don't think this one's all that great. Maxima Blastenheimer is a 3-star card. Darkmoon Tonk is a 2-star card. And then I missed these 2 cards previously, so I'm catching up on the ratings here. Solar Eclipse is a 4-star card. Lunar Eclipse is a 4-star card. And there you go, folks. That wraps it up for this review. Not a lot here. I thought we'd see more cards today, but hey, it's what we got, so we'll make the most of it. Interesting cards, really neat, fun designs. I like these a lot. I'm not sure they're going to find that home that they're looking for in Hunter. They feel like they're going to demand a lot and maybe not give all that much back. If the minions survived here, I think it might be okay still, just because of Hunter deck building requirements for Maxima. But hey, let's wait and see. We might get more support. That said, I think there's just that hope here that Maxima makes sense. Clearly a big impact sometimes. Just how is that going to fit into a deck? How's it going to be better than other things we've seen? That said, share your thoughts. Do you think this is going to make a ton of sense? Is this going to be a home run? Leave that down in the comments below. Thanks much, as always, for watching. And until next time, game on.